They were supposed to.
And he came to Jax's house that morning.
I saw that.
Right.
Right. And then he said to me, black. And then it was a setup.
Did you think it was gonna be like me or something?
No, why would I think that? You have quite a reputation for that.
I have my
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, he buzzed through it and like,
all right.
Well, if it was a beautiful day.
Providing a roast.
All right.
Cool night, but a beautiful day.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a copy of the agenda? Oh, you want to use one, somebody's?
There you go.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, thank you. Got it, you got it, got it.
That was your agenda.
It is, but I haven't had a copy of it.
you didn't memorize it?
I could
Take
fake it.
one.
I could look at somebody
Probably,
else's.
yeah.
I could look at someone else's. All right, it's about 5 minutes past 7. It's Wednesday, October 2nd, and we'll open up the meeting of the Finance Committee. We have a quorum. I'm not sure if, I'll open with a little bit of housekeeping. I would imagine that we might see Sean Tyler. I haven't heard from him yet, that he's not coming, but I did hear from Tom Cook, and he can no longer be part of the, can no longer serve on the Finance Committee. So we are now short by one, so if anybody has any interest in serving on the Finance Committee, I would suggest they contact Sean Riley, the town manager, the town moderator, potentially to talk about that opportunity. So for right now, we do have a quorum, so we can move along. And tonight, thank you, we have the town manager. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for
you.
coming.
Good to be here.
Oh.
Always fun.
Thank you. And we do have a bunch of things on the agenda tonight. First and foremost of which, just to talk about the town meeting. The special town meeting that we hold in the fall is coming up. It's scheduled for November 4th. I have a calendar here somewhere. And so, for those interested, like I said, it begins at 7 o'clock on Monday, November 4th. It's the special town meeting. What we have today to go over, one of the things we're going to go over today is the warrant for the special town meeting. And we can get right into that. Why don't we
That's
do
fine.
that?
All right, if you don't mind, I'll distribute, I have 2 documents that I'm only gonna explain once.
Once again.
Actually.
Excuse me.
That's right, take one and pass it.
I already have one.
What's coming, one is the warrant itself, which is not final, it's still to be reviewed by council, town council. There's a couple places where you can see like legal citation that needs to be added. Probably would be some recommendation on some language. The next document is several pages of a couple spreadsheets I put together, a summary, which we can discuss, obviously. The capital article, and some of funding sources, and a couple other things, but as well as some just proposed some early on draft motions. So I don't know how you want to handle this, Maureen, but if I could just throw out a quick disclaimer that when you see anything that says recommended at this point is really in draft form, just so you know. Okay, there's nothing here that's recommended specifically, but in trying to put together something plausible, had to fill in columns, and so just so you know what you're looking at here.
That's the term we're using right now, but it's
Plausible?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's-
yes.
And I will say for anyone who is watching this, as I mentioned, the town meeting is November 4th, so what we're going to be discussing right now is a draft of the warrant, which basically covers the articles that are going to be brought forth, or potentially may be brought forth, on that night, November 4th. The special town meeting warrant, based upon recent changes to distribution that information that was changed in the charter, this information will be available on the town website. I think, would we say it was 14 days prior to the town meeting?
Right, which would be the 21st
Of October.
of October, correct.
Okay. And the Finance Committee, at that same time, will have their recommendations. By charter, the Finance Committee has to provide recommendations on each of the articles. And so we will have those as well. Our goal would be to have those wrapped up by the 18th, which is that Friday, so that they would be available that Monday, the 21st as well. So, just from a timing perspective. So, thank you. So anything, this is again still draft. People can't find it yet on, if they're watching this sometime, anytime before the 21st of October. But they will have it then. I still think we also send out postcards or something,
We
or
do,
some kind of
right.
mailing too that tells people where to get it.
Yes.
There's usually hard copies available in a number of locations as well around town.
Yes, that's correct. But yeah, the postcard will reference the town's website where they'll be able to find the warrant.
Yes, okay, awesome, thank
right.
you. So, back to you.
Would you like me to just start right in on
Start at the
one
beginning?
article at a time? Okay, the
think
first.
that's a good idea.
The first article is the stabilization article. The number you see here is 660. The reason for that is because we thought, the complete upper level possibility of our free cash certification was about 1.1 million. And the goal was to put, it's kind of an unwritten goal policy, is to try to put 60% of that number into stabilization. And initially, the first concern was to make sure that we had at least the 536 that was used in the budget last year. But the financial team had thought that it was very, again, plausible to be able to put 60% of whatever that number was. We believed it might be as high as 1.1 million. If you look at the front page of the worksheet that I distributed, the bottom piece of that, actually, the actual free cash number that was actually, I need to get rid of the word projected, because as of today, it was actually certified at 1.4782. So that changes the actual number, the 60% of that, which is right down below, is 628. That would be 60% of that number. So Article 1 would be looking to recommend the 628 number.
628,249.
Right, which is exactly 60% of that, one of the certified number above.
Which does clearly cover the 536,000 that was
Right.
taken out for budget.
Right. So.
Thank you.
Article 2 is unpaid bills, and as you can see from, if you're following along the front page of the article summary that I have, the first two of those, Eastern Cedar and some outstanding payroll to Patricia LeBrecq. This is the golf course committee. That would be encompassed in the motion that the enterprise fund is paying for those first two bills. And then the last bill is the town's municipal insurance. My understanding is this was a deductible piece that came in, or I'm sorry, a policy addition that came in after last year's, after the annual town meeting.
So is it health insurance, did you say?
No, this is the municipal property casualty. It was an endorsement that was, it came in at the end of last fiscal year, and it wasn't too late for the annual town meeting to be put on there as a end of the year transfer. So this would be coming out of the existing year's municipal budget. We think we've got about $6,000 to $7,000 in there buffer. And again, that's all will be framed as part of the motion that we can put together too. So
And you said the first two are from Golf Course Enterprise?
exactly.
Okay. And the other one's from municipal budget.
Article 3 is where it starts to get a little complicated, and that would be the funding some sort of capital plan for the current fiscal year. I preface this by saying that the selectmen did not choose to remove any requests from the actual warrant, but everyone understands, the board understands, as were the department heads, that doesn't mean that it hits the warrant, it's funded, or it's going to be put forward as a recommendation to be funded. I assume that's similar to the past, but I don't know culturally how things might be a little bit different. So if you look at the next page of the warrant, well, actually, it is the warrant, I'm sorry. You have the requests in the left, the town manager recommended, which again, I caution is a draft piece at this point. And what I have here as in the recommended line item is what, again, I think is plausible in terms of expenditures from free cash. If I could, real quick, go through them if you don't mind.
No, please, go ahead.
Police, 2 marked cruisers, and again, I'm not expert on what their replacement policy is at this point, so, but I have reason to believe that this is ordinary course of business. The fire department, they're looking to replace their 12-year-old ambulance, and the 225, it would come out of the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation account. It would be probably a lease purchase of 7 to 10 years, probably closer to 7.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
The cruiser replacement,
Yes.
we've kind of gone back and forth on, Chief had looked to put that in his budget. Are we gonna, is that gonna be done differently? Is this something that you've talked with him about, or?
I haven't talked to him about the format, whether it should be in the budget or in the capital plan. Yeah, I know it's not in the budget, and I know he did submit a request for the capital plan this year. So he and I haven't had that discussion, and Maureen has informed me that there's been that discussion among the board and the chief in the past about whether or not the item belongs in the budget or belongs in the capital plan. Historically, in my experience, those have been on a capital plan as opposed to a budget line item, but, you know, there's no right or wrong, it's just, you know, but he's not requested to transfer money into his budget for this, if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if a conversation had taken place, because I know we're
not
kind of, I understand why he wants it in the budget, because it
Sure.
is something that he does need now every year.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
On a rotating schedule, I think it was like 2.
Yeah, it was like
Did it
2,
get
3, and
removed from
2.
his budget?
Yeah.
3, 2, and 2, I think is what
Yeah.
it has been the rotating budget, but we do, as I recall, it's not in his existing operating budget, so I'm not
Right.
surprised to see it on the
Right.
capital
Sure.
plan, and whatever the proper way you guys
Yeah.
decide to go
And
forward.
I have not talked to him about the format issue. But like I said, Maureen did give me a little heads up that has been an issue recently in the last couple of years or so. But we'll have to figure that out going forward, I suppose. But so the fire chief did submit a request to replace his 1968 rescue boat. And although I think it's probably a good idea, again, I just want you to understand that I'm trying to put a plausible plan together within the available free cash. So, you know, I don't, this is a draft column, don't take this as a repudiation of the request, because I'm sure if I was out there, I'd rather see a 2014 boat coming to save me rather than something from 1968, so, not that that's old. I don't want anyone to
No,
get that
1968
impression.
is not old. The chief did, fire chief also sent to us, which I think you
Yes,
was
very
privy
good,
to,
yeah, very helpful.
which was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You guys all got that, right? It was basically like all his thoughts about where things stand right now, why he was asking for what he was asking, the status on the antenna and all that. So I think, Deb, I gave you a copy of that too, right? I don't know that we're gonna go into that, but you guys can read that too, and I think you got.
No, and I think it should all be in the minutes of the meeting.
Mhm. It'll be added to the minutes.
I don't think she agrees with me on that.
It'll be an exhibit A.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to thank him for sending, I sent
Yeah.
an email to him thanking him, but I wanted to make sure that I sent that to everybody, so you guys all have the same thoughts that he's expressed to me.
The school department, there's no anticipation by the school superintendent or assistant that the roof project is fundable this year. Their concern is that they want to keep it on the radar screen, and which raises the issue that one of the goals that I have through the selectmen is to update a 5-year capital plan, which in all reality we know to a great extent is somewhat of a catalog of necessary assets as opposed to what you can actually fund. But I think in recognition that has been gone by the wayside a little bit, I think this is just an opportunity to try and make sure that people don't, in their opinion, don't forget that that's a project that's coming eventually. So, so there's no anticipation that that's going to be funded this year, so.
Can I ask a question on that? Go ahead. If they're gonna build a new school, isn't it all incorporated that they're gonna repair some schools and build a new school?
Well, right now, to the best of my knowledge, Rick, there is no discussion about a building package which repairs the Woodsdale. It's just simply of the new facility, whether it's going to be a 5 through 12, 6 through 12 in the location. But, however, I think, and as you know, roof projects historically can get onto the the state list.
List, right.
For some reimbursement. And I'm not sure where that is at this point, but like I said, the school administration does not anticipate this is going to be funded at this time, so.
So they want to keep it on the radar, knowing,
Right.
as Rick said,
Right.
that there is the Abington School Building Committee who's
Yeah.
made a submission of a number of options. And then also the Woodsdale was where the windows were replaced
Right.
2 years
Sure.
ago,
Yeah.
so.
And I think in the future, the format for the wish list would be the 5-year capital plan, which is not what is reflected on a warrant recommendation, you know what I mean? But I think for a little bit of lack of that, and people just aren't being cautious that they keep their needs out there, so. The technology plan, that's the goal here, and again, you can speak to the school administration yourself, the goal here is to replace 3 computer labs. I've been instructed that, most of these facilities are, using 8, 9, 10-year-old computers, and I have to admit, I'm a little sympathetic to the needs of kids that age.
Sure.
So, but again, trying to find the right number within available funds. I know the school superintendent said he's, obviously willing to work with us as much as possible to try and find that right amount that people are comfortable with this coming fiscal year. So, so I have the 150 in there because that would work right now. But there are some other considerations that I want to, we'll bring to your attention as we move on.
With regard to the 150, what would that be earmarked to? In other words, would it be specifically allocated towards a portion of the technology or something like that? Because it's less than any of the requested whole dollar amounts?
Yeah, my understanding is that that would be specifically for hardware and software in the three computer labs, as well as, and this is where it gets a little beyond my expertise, the expansion of bandwidth so that everybody who's using a computer can actually have a computer that's actually working, rather than just having a piece of equipment that doesn't have all the full capabilities. So that's what I've been instructed by the superintendent, and if I've misrepresented that a little bit, you'll find that out, I think, at your next meeting, but that's my understanding.
Thank you.
I mean, we certainly can have our liaison, who's liaison to school department?
And I did, and you're exactly right. You
Okay,
said that
thank you.
they're replacing computers that are 7 to 8 years old.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, the computers that can't handle the educational software and required internet speed. So,
Cindy, did they indicate in what grades those are, or are they across the board?
he didn't say, he just said they're replacing 7 to 8-year-old computers.
So once again, trying to find the right number is a little bit of is always a challenge. And and one of my particular concerns historically is when there's funds to be expended, available funds, it's always important that, in my opinion, that major departments get a piece of that, so that there's relative harmony as well as. I think relative harmony. I think that says it all. So, so what that right amount is, again, that's an issue for everybody.
Well, he wrote in here too that he would take whatever the town can afford.
Yes. Right. I mean, I certainly can't argue with it, how accommodating he and Felicia have been in terms of, but like I said, that's their number one capital goal this year. And to the extent that there's, X amount of funds available, I think a healthy portion should be expended on the biggest department in the town. That's just,
Absolutely.
so moving forward, I know historically, I have been instructed that the highway department has tried to maintain some funds, usually through articles for drainage and sidewalk repair. I know that, I believe, who's his liaison? I know somebody was
Highway,
gonna
is that Cindy also again?
be. Did you meet with Kenan on this
I
yet? or
talked to him
talk-
this morning.
Okay, all right, so, I don't know if you have anything more.
No, the only thing he said, they're trying to keep things updated, and I believe, my understanding would be this would pay the materials to be able to fix sidewalks, because they have all the equipment that's just sitting, doing nothing.
Right.
And he would be able to get more bang for his buck if he was to do it with our equipment, so the
With his
50,000
labor.
would,
Yeah.
and he's been targeting certain places that need to really be taken care of.
The next issue, Griffin's Dairy, and I explained to Maureen a little bit earlier that the goal as set forth is to, by the committee, and also some of the selectmen have raised the issue. None of the public safety officials, they've all been very careful, as you can imagine, in terms of their opinion of this, so as not to create any liability, I think, for the town. But I think there's a general consensus that those facilities, the barn and the house, need to go. I've had two relatively independent estimates that total about $70,000. This was since the $100,000 number was put out there. Those numbers don't. That 70,000 estimates, my concern is that they don't contemplate prevailing wages in permitting costs, et cetera. So I would like to maintain some reasonable buffer, because there's nothing worse than coming in with 70,000 and finding out you need another $15,000 to actually do the project, and where you're gonna get that money. So, and it's always difficult when you get up to a certain amount of money before you've actually done a procurement to know exactly how much you need. I mean, it wouldn't be nice if there was funds remaining after. Of course, it's always difficult too, because anybody worth their salt in a public project can look and see how much you've appropriated for it. So it's always that, you can't win, so. And if any demolition experts are watching, forget I said that.
Give us your best help.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, yeah, Chad, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, yeah.
If it's not including permitting, does it include hazardous materials and consideration for that?
Well, that's part of, yeah, I should have mentioned that. Part of my concern, because I've been told that there's probably asbestos, and is that the amount that we've received from people, the quotes, don't anticipate some of those things that we have particular obligations for, some of them that are particular to a public project. So my answer to you is that my understanding is that it does, the 70,000 probably incorporated that, but we don't know that for sure, but there will be some mitigation requirements, And if it's a $200,000 project, in the end, after we bid it, well, we're all coming back in next year anyway to talk about
Yeah,
it.
we gotta
We
review
just don't
that.
spend, the worst case scenario is we don't spend the funds, and then we figure out how to do it some other way or some other time.
But putting 90,000 away is
Well,
what
we're
is
hoping
comfortable at
this-
this moment. Given things we know and we don't know.
Right.
We're good with that.
Right. And I'm a bureaucrat, I'm not a builder, so I have to take what I hear from some of the more expert people in this stuff until we can actually do a procurement, so.
So we're back to it's
We-
plausible.
Yeah, and we don't do a procurement
Again.
until you have something to work with, obviously, so. Council on Aging, as I think you're all aware, that they've received a grant from the DOT to replace their van. There is a requirement for a local share, which comes to about $10,000. They do have a few $1,000s, I think about $3,400 in their gift account, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, when people partake of the service, there isn't a fee per se, but they are encouraged to make a donation. So that donation is set up in a gift account, and so the goal would be to use approximately $7,700 in free cash, combined with the balance, or a healthy chunk of what's in the gift account, to make the local share. And there's no reason for the motion, as I understand it, to reflect the use of the gift account, because that's under the jurisdiction of the Council on Aging at any given time, so we don't need to appropriate those funds, I don't think. Council will advise us if we need to, but I don't think there's a need to specifically appropriate those funds.
That's correct. We would appropriate this amount, and then
Right.
they would,
They would supplement their
utilize-
gift account, right.
and I think if it all had, if it was, and I don't know, but as I recall, if it's money coming from use of the van to be used to replace the van, it seems to be
It's an,
appropriate
yes,
use, but-
there's no question, right.
Okay.
The next two, enterprise account, or replacing, sewer enterprise would be replacing utility truck, and the same with the water department. This would be a portion of the cost of replacing a vehicle, the treatment vehicle. A portion will be borne obviously by the Rockland piece of this organization, so. So, when you add up all the plausible column, I should probably take off recommended, call it the plausible column. That comes to $381,000 in free cash. Now, adding the ambulance and the enterprise fund totals, that's $683, and which is what you see on,
683.
yes,
They
that,
are?
you see on,
That's for the first page.
right. This is supposed to tie together, so let me know if you see any numbers that, because we've updated them several times at this point, but that does go to
Yeah,
the
the
capital plan total.
381,000 comes out of free cash, and the other two items,
Mhm.
we have ambulance lease, sewer, and water. You guys following along? Cindy, you have questions?
Just one quick question, I got all of these, it looks like all of these things, if we recommended everything, would be paid out and purchased during the year. It's not gonna be monies that we would set aside and hold in case something were to happen.
That is correct. And at this point in the fiscal year, I would anticipate that most of these things would be accomplished by the end of the fiscal year. I don't know how long it would take to procure and effectively build an ambulance. But you would be paying out funds all along during
It would be going
different
along, but
phases.
it wouldn't be something that we would put into this year's capital plan and hold it for maybe a year or 2 or 3, just in case something were to break, and it just sits in the account not being used.
The answer is no. The only thing that I can maybe contemplate is, like I said, if we get surprised by the Griffin's Dairy and we just don't have enough money after we do an actual procurement, but we'll all be aware of that, and if there's a way to supplement that, or just, it's hard to say that we would just not do the project. Eventually, it's gonna get done.
And if
And
there's
so-
money in the capital plan that hasn't been utilized, because it's just sitting there, how do you get that back into like general fund, or
From
can
prior
it be
years?
brought back?
You mean like from prior years, if there's?
Yeah, you'd have to have an article to reappropriate funds from one article to another purpose.
How do we find that, how do we know, like, who would know if there's unexpended funds?
Well, the town accountant would be the person she should be able to, I'm sure she can reproduce a report of all, I'm sure she does produce a report all the time, every month, of the unexpended balances from every account, whether it's a budget account, an article, or gifts, trusts, whatever the case might be, so. I also know she's been I know she's only been here about a little over a year, as I understand it, but she's been trying to clean it. I guess there was an ungodly amount of accounts that, a lot of them, that just probably don't need to exist anymore. So staying on top of those is not easy, I'm sure, but that's something that she's been trying to deal with, so.
Yeah, we've had a couple situations where she's found things, or she's
Yeah.
found things that, and has brought them directly,
Mhm.
you know, so it's been very good. To have a fresh set of eyes looking at things, I think, is always helpful, so. So Cindy, just to like follow up on what you were saying, you know, if there was anything, I guess Sue would be the person to.
Yeah. The next article would be a generic article that I've kind of used in the past and other experiences, that would, more of a housekeeping to move money around existing budget line items. And if you look at the third page of what I distributed to you in the spreadsheet package, And once again, I caution you about how strong the word recommendation means at this level of the process. These are essentially the requests. The title is FY 2014 line item transfer recommendations. And if I could take 30 seconds, the first one would be, for the library, would help them, prevent them from needing a state waiver this year. That's the amount they're below what they need to avoid a waiver. The building department, apparently there was some underfunding during the budget process. Some, probably, in the requested budget apparently had missed some of the contractual benefits that were required.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
The wage increase, do you know what that was?
That's a step increase that was due on an
So it's
anniversary
a contract,
date.
it was not a, it's a union,
Collective bargaining.
right, it's not a, not a non-union position.
Correct.
Yes.
The Board of Health has asked for another $2,000 for the hazardous waste day. Apparently, as I'm instructed, that there's a shared program between Whitman and Abington, and this year it's Abington's turn, and they need a few more dollars. So
While we're on that, there's a hazardous waste day coming up, isn't there?
there is, yes.
Saturday.
Right.
Here in Abington? or-
Yes.
How does that work if they don't have that yet?
Well, there's apparently, I think there's $3,000 available, but they need, I think this year, most of it, the brunt of that, during the whole fiscal year falls on Abington. This is what I've been told by the Board of Health, so.
When is it again? You said it's this weekend?
Saturday.
Yeah, there was a flyer.
Okay.
Saturday,
If it
on the
was,
highway
yeah.
department. A lot more gas is going away.
Yeah, this is not an issue for Saturday. As I understand, there's multiple opportunities at different times of the year for, you would know better than I would at this
They
point.
hold it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Well, and-
I think that this particular one was probably already planned in there, the funding that they have.
I'm sorry, Chad.
What I've seen in my brief research, I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of gas. You're allowed to go to other towns, so you would call, and they would give you something that you can go to the hazardous waste in a different town, so maybe it's to fund those.
Well, we will get more detail by the time you actually have to make a recommendation, but I wish I had better info for you right now, but my only information is more holistic at the moment, so. The Board of Health staffing is probably not an issue. There's actually enough money in the budget to keep the part-time position for the rest of just about the rest of the fiscal year. My understanding is that there was funds put aside for matching, for some match of a grant that's been submitted to sustain her staffing through next year. And that actually represented in what's in the line item this year for the position. So my general attitude is, well, we'll deal with next year's requirements if we get the grant next fiscal year, and not try to set money aside from the existing line item. So it's, again, it was a
Right.
request, but I think it was definitely a request born out of good faith, but not something that's really necessary for this fiscal year. The next two is, I think, the real discussion item is veterans benefits. Right now, the veterans line item is running, is about halfway through this early in the fiscal year. And, in order to have money available without going to another special town meeting would mean we're gonna have to put money into that line item, or, as you can see below, put money into the reserve fund so that the finance committee will have funds available. And I know, I talked to Maureen about this, and we discussed a little bit about, the philosophical issue is, what's the right use of the reserve fund? Is this, is this emergency and unforeseen, or whatever the case is? And that's a policy, philosophical question for you, not for me. My concern is making sure that there's funds available as much as we can to avoid having to go to a town meeting. as you know, those funds are reimbursed at a 75%, but it's a cash flow problem. And as I mentioned to Maureen, some communities do utilize a reserve, a revolving account and peel off the cherry sheet receipts for veterans' benefits, so that they actually have to appropriate the 25% local piece. And it avoids, the big spikes in an annual appropriation, whether that's something you want to think about down the road, not going to help us now. But there is going to be some issue, to the extent of which we're not quite certain yet. The caseload is up substantially this year, although some of that's dropping off already. There were some one-time expenses, which, again, we won't see again. But it's, again, this early in the fiscal year, I wouldn't want to have to go and have a special town meeting to pay our veterans' benefits.
That's gonna cost us money to get money, too.
And good luck trying to get a quorum to pay veterans' benefits. So, the $25,000 that I have here in that last line, and again, proposed as a possible reserve fund, if you went to the front page of the special town meeting article summary, that's the remainder of free cash. If you were to fund a couple other article requests that are later on here, about 12,500 and other article requests, plus the capital plan. That's the amount of free cash that would be left. So, to me, I'm really not married to either way, whether you want to have those funds available in the reserve fund, because he doesn't need them tomorrow.
Right.
He doesn't need them November 4th or probably December 4th, but eventually, between now and some other town meeting, that account's going to run low. So, my preference actually would be to have those funds in the reserve fund, and rather than supplement a budget line item this early in the fiscal year. But, like I said, it's a little bit of a philosophical question as to whether you feel that's an appropriate role for a reserve fund or not. So it's not a legal issue, it's really a.
We did cut those benefits last year. They took
Did
about,
you?
I think they took about $17,000 away
Yeah.
from, in that particular line.
Did we take it out of the benefits, or did we take it out of
We
the
took it
salary?
right out of veterans' benefits.
I thought we took it out of the salary because we
We
weren't
got
funding.
rid of the salary. They did an awful lot, an awful number in his budget.
Okay.
Joe wasn't
I can
around
remember, yeah.
Yeah.
Joe wasn't around to develop it, and John developed it and then left.
Yeah.
Where would that money go if it didn't go into the reserve fund?
It would just stay as free cash available for appropriation later on.
But we need a
But you need a
to take
special
it out
town
of,
meeting. You need a special town meeting to appropriate.
and there's just
Yeah. So the-
conversation, there's no other there's no other fund that, say, the selectman's office is in charge of, or that
They don't,
That's what the
they
reserve- yeah.
don't, they don't trust
Oh,
us with
yeah.
excess funds. No, there isn't another animal. That it would have to be either reserve fund or put it in the benefits line item, or wait and see. That's why, like I say, it's not out of the question, although it's unlikely, in my opinion, that a lot of this activity will drop off, and, he won't need the funds, but it's very, very unlikely that that's gonna happen. So, but because he doesn't need the funds today or tomorrow or by November 4th, it seems to me putting it in the hands of the Finance Committee kind of meets both goals. Both
You have a
goals.
question? Go ahead.
I do too.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad, or which other one?
Why not just put it into his fund then? If we know that he's gonna need it,
Well,
save the
that's-
step of having to come and get it from us.
yeah.
Could put some of it in there.
Well, again, that's,
If
That's,
17,000 was taken, why don't we put that back?
You have to
Maybe
go back
not.
and look and make sure it was
Yeah.
17. but
Whatever
I
it
know
is.
it was quite a bit.
yeah. Well, I mean, we have,
17,
yeah, I mean, we have,
step back.
obviously have time to figure that out, but we can get that number. There's obviously the benefit of, well, actually, it is, I know it's a little bit of a burden for the Finance Committee. I appreciate that, too. So, but, like I said, whenever there is a, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, the caseload drops off dramatically and he never needs the funds, but it's in his, like I said, it's probably not gonna happen, though. It's not gonna happen, or,
Well, if that was to happen, one way or the other, it's sitting with him unused or it's sitting with us.
well, it's,
sitting
again, that's
somewhere.
why I said it's really, this is a discussion item. However you're comfortable, I'm trying to meet the goal. I'm really not, how you're comfortable meeting the goal is fine with me.
Let's say that in the spring, when we go to town meeting, there is a proposal for, or an article for creating a revolving fund. What would happen in the interim? Would they potentially run out of money for funding for those veterans in need during that interim time period? And is that kind of the thought process behind this?
No. Well, the answer is they would run out of money, yes, but that's not, my thought process, bringing up a revolving fund is really unrelated. It's more of a different animal I'm talking about that just helps avoid major spikes, because you're only dealing with 25% once you have the seed money and once you get the first cherry sheet return in there. So it's not going to change the dynamics for this fiscal year at all.
Okay.
So it would basically be, if that 25,000 was put into the veterans benefits budget, that's where it would be. And what, like, as Rick was saying, they may or may not use all of that, but it would be in their budget. At the end of the fiscal year, if there was money back, that would go into the general fund.
Right.
And become free cash at some point.
Or it could be transferred out.
Or it could be transferred at the end of the
Spring.
year, like we do things where, we're taking money from unused health benefits and
Well,
we're
just
putting
like
it here.
this, you'd
Yeah,
just be doing
just
the
like
same
that.
thing, so it's.
So the theory could also be that the money is put into, parked, if you will, in the reserve account, and if the benefits were to run out based on what the budget is, the veterans agent could come to us and we could allocate the funds out.
Okay.
In the interim, in the meantime.
But then would we still be stuck by that caveat of anything that we allocate has to be for an unforeseen emergency, and then would we be able to?
That's what we were talking about, that's how we've always managed that, and whether or not that would or would not fall into that definition, and whether or not that definition would have to remain as that. Now, the other question would come up, could someone else, some other department need it?
Right.
And ask
Before
for
they
it
need
too,
it.
before
That's a
they
good
need it.
point,
So-
yeah.
So it's like, again, part of discussion, so.
It would kind of open up a little bit of a Pandora's box with that if you earmark it for one, it
Which you
opens
could,
it up to
yeah,
anyone.
You really couldn't earmark it, but.
Well, and if you look at, and I know we've had a little discussion on these potential transfers, the only line item that I think you would even contemplate using free cash for would be to fund the, entitlement program like veterans benefits. These other items, if we can't identify the funds within the existing operating budgets throughout the town, these can't, as much as I would like to see the library avoid the need for a waiver, if we can't identify that level of funding somewhere else in another budget or line item, those things I don't think are fundable without existing budget line item transfers. The veterans benefits is a little different. That's an entitlement program, and, of which you're getting 75% return. So that's why 25,000 is the balance of free cash, but I wouldn't suggest that that's available for any of those other potential transfers above, so.
Yeah, because you're not gonna use free cash for something that's an ongoing expense.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
But what
so.
you're saying, of course, is that only, with the veterans benefits, because those are reimbursed, all but
Right.
25%, it makes a little bit more sense, plus coupled with the fact that Rick confirmed that we've
We did cut it
we
last
reduced
year.
that budget, so maybe that money should have been in the budget and found elsewhere anyway. but-
Which is why my thinking is, all right, is there any way to get a projected amount needed from them that could be allocated to fund that, so that they don't have a deficit or anything like that, but at the same time, then we can address everything else in the spring?
So basically it comes down to trying to
Yeah.
get a closer estimate of how much benefit would,
Yeah.
I know you said some things are dropping off and coming on, and
We
it's a
have-
moving target, but.
Yeah, we have asked the veterans agent to do his best to try and put together some projection. But as it is tricky though, because there's a caseload that rises, it falls. One of the things they do try to do is move people onto federal benefits when it's appropriate, and he does that,
Yep.
just like Joe did, but it takes time. So it's a very tricky thing to try and project, but in fairness, we all deserve the ability to see more or less, at least what he can come up with, you know?
He could email you that number, though, and two
Problem
guys
is,
could
well,
walk in the
but
door.
the problem is, though, is that number could look a lot more, like a lot more than $25,000, or, depending on, you know, projections of projections,
They
so,
are.
you might be, you know, sorry what you asked for, one of those deals, so, but we've asked anyway, so.
And so
But
that's
again,
some-
these aren't,
that's
these
something
aren't
we can
issues to be
consider.
decided, but it's just something to keep in mind. Keep in mind, you know, how you might want to handle this. To say, I'm not particularly concerned about the format, I just want to make sure we're all aware of the issue so that we can address it somehow.
Okay. Well, that's good information.
And then maybe even taking a look at what we cut last year from
Right.
what their requested budget was, and kind of as a default, maybe putting that back or something.
See, Joe didn't make out the budget last year, John did.
Right.
Yeah,
And then he cut money out of the budget. With Joe not being around, they didn't have to pay out a lot of stuff. You know, when he was sick. And then all of a sudden, you got a new guy and people are coming in looking for aid. They can't go on welfare.
Right, which is why what I'm kind of looking at is, all right, what was the original budget?
Yeah.
Which was based on the past budgets, and maybe even just putting that back,
That's what I
seeing
was
where it
thinking.
goes.
Bring it back to its original.
okay.
See where that yeah.
We'll get some of
more
those numbers
information on
and get those out to people, so we have a broader perspective, so, okay. The other articles won't take a whole lot of time to deal with. Articles 5 and 6 are petition articles. I don't know if you've already read them in some format. The goal here is to oppose any changes to the master plan without the consent of the communities involved. And we have every reason, I mean, I don't know how much of what your history is in taking these matters into consideration for recommendations, but the development company has more or less made it clear that their intent is to go and try to get change the enabling legislation for the project without having to come back to the communities for their approval, so that's a big issue, that's a serious issue. Whether or not there's any realistic political chance of that happening, we don't know yet. But, you know, we're working diligently on that level with our senator and rep to see what we can do to ensure that doesn't happen. But this was, again, these are petition articles, so I don't know. I think Mr. Shea, Joe Shea, was the lead petitioner, and I'm sure if he's available, he'd be happy to speak to you about this when you have your next meeting, too.
I think that's what we'll do. We'll get his contact information and see if he wants to come and, I mean, that has historically been what we've done with petition articles,
Okay.
is bring the petitioner in to give us some insight. And then oftentimes, they also tend to go through council too, to see if, depending on how the town votes, is it a substantive vote? Does it require us to do something, or is it a sense of the meeting type of thing, you know?
Right.
Depending on how this is written and what the town has quote-unquote the right or the ability to do with if I read this, it's to see if the town will motion to have the town of Abington, at the town meeting, vote, so basically have the town meeting vote to oppose any change to the redevelopment plan, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what weight that holds.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know about this,
Sure.
the
Right,
underlying
isn't it?
situation itself. So why don't, Joe Shea will
Okay.
contact him, ask him to come in.
And, as I said, I'm happy to contact these people, but
That would
you need to let me know that you absolutely want me to, don't?
All right, we can talk about that.
Okay. And
And we can talk about it right now, I mean, not, you guys feel the same way, we've done historically in the past, is bring
Right.
petitions in, so yeah, I would say we would want to.
All right, and
to
again,
speak with Mr. Shea.
if you'd like me to
you
extend
would.
the invitation so you don't have to deal with that, I'm fine, but
That
I
would be
just
good.
want to know who's doing what.
Yep, we would
So-
be planning to meet, the 16th of
Okay.
October,
All right. Okay,
if you'll copy me on that.
absolutely.
If you don't mind, that way, in
Absolutely.
case he has any questions after you extend the invitation. When we meet, what time to be here, et cetera. Thank you.
And I would assume that would also extend to the Griffin's Dairy Committee Chairman, as well as the school administration. And I could CC you, I mean, again,
sure.
it's easier for me just to do that.
Yeah, sure.
You have
The
to
Article 7 is
worry about
is
that.
the Griffin's Dairy, looking for
Yeah.
$2,500 to mow the grass
Yes,
for previous approvals.
Do you know anything about that?
not much at this
Do you know who
point.
would be doing the mowing?
We do not have a contractor lined up, if that's what you mean, I do not have.
Well, I was wondering if
This
it's the
was the
highway
number
department.
that was presented to us about 2 weeks ago by the chairman of that committee. So as far as whether or not 2,500 is sufficient, I really don't know. This comes from
We
the
can
committee,
ask
so we'll be
Mr. Donovan.
deliberating on that between now and then.
Yeah, sure, if you'll extend that invitation as well. You guys good with that?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, if it
We have
says,
some questions, and who would be doing it,
yeah,
insurance and all that jazz, I imagine.
we'll make sure you're CC'd on all these notices,
Thank you.
Maureen, just so you,
Thank you.
when you get, if you don't see them in a day or two, you get nervous, you know what,
I
no.
know where to find you.
No, we'll get it, we'll get
Can't
it
seem
out.
to get here
we'll get it out.
sometimes, but I do know where to find you.
I'm not going there if, I'll keep you
Thank
covered
you.
on that if you want. The next two are school committee articles that aren't necessarily appropriations or transfers, so to speak, from in the traditional sense. One, they'll have to speak to that themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had conversations with Peter about 8 and 9.
Now, this is a school committee as opposed to school department, so this would reach out to Jan Larry, I'm thinking, the head of the school committee? Or was this something that,
I'm presuming that the school superintendent will speak to these,
Okay.
but I'm not, again,
Okay.
not sure what I will ask him if he, well, I'll ask him to.
which way to go on
Yeah,
that?
which way to, thank you, Maury, which way to go on that, so.
Okay.
The same with 9 would be a transfer from an existing article, although I have to say a cursory quick look at the FY12 town meeting, I didn't see a masonry repairs to the schools article.
No, I didn't either.
And so he may have given me the wrong year on
Yeah, I
that,
don't
but
remember
that's,
anything about masonry.
we'll clarify what
Okay.
that year is, but they're looking to,
Though,
I do remember
2012?
the
Would
conversation
that
about
have to be, would that have to do with
11.
regard to the windows?
I remember
'Cause we're-
something about
we're-
the pointing, I remember a conversation, I just don't remember
Okay.
what it was, or.
Because again, it
we
wouldn't be
do remember
last year,
having
it
that
would be the year
conversation.
before, so, okay,
that's all yours.
About the crumbling.
okay.
Article 10 is the zoning bylaw. Are you entertaining zoning bylaws, or do you just leave that to the planning board to make a recommendation?
That's generally the kind of thing that our depending on, after reading all this, oftentimes what we'll do is the planning board usually will go in front of the board of selectmen at some point closer to town meeting, and they'll,
Okay, all right.
blah, blah, blah. They tend to come down on one side or another on this. And at town meeting, something like this, we would often defer to them to make the recommendation.
Unless we
Between
felt
that-
super strong.
What?
And sometimes if we felt super strong
Unless we felt super strong
something.
about it. Though, the fact that it's in here sometimes is a little bit preliminary. They put it in, and then whether or not they decide to follow through with it or not.
Well, this is a moratorium article, so I have no doubt they intend to follow through on this. If this was actually a bylaw, it may be one of those things where they want further review or something, but this is, again, a moratorium article, so that nothing can happen until we have a bylaw in place, so. But if you'd like, I can extend an invitation to the planning board, or
Yeah.
if you don't, it's up to
I'm
you,
good
if you
with
wanna,
it.
if you wanna do that, speak to them at your meeting.
Absolutely,
Okay.
I don't know, you got,
Very
Because I
good.
think my question on that would be, okay, to amend the zoning bylaws, that would either be the zoning board or, I don't,
appeals.
Planning board, it really would be planning board. The
Okay.
ZBA doesn't generally get involved in changing zoning.
Yeah, why don't we-
Just interpreting it for us
Yeah.
later
The
on.
moratorium runs out before we're meeting again.
When does the moratorium run out, Chad, I'm hearing?
June 30th of 2014, so if we didn't act on zoning, if the town didn't act on zoning bylaw changes at the special, when we meet, I think we
But
would
we-
miss the chance to amend it again.
At the last meeting, though, we put a moratorium of a year out anyway, didn't we?
But
I think that
They
year's up.
expire on the 30th of 14.
30th of which month?
June.
2014?
Yeah, so that must be the year.
So we'd have to, so if I'm hearing you correctly, this, obviously it has to be taken up in this November 2013.
And this just seems like it might be another moratorium.
It is, that's what it is, exactly, another temporary
Put
moratorium.
it off, okay, well, then let's,
Well, this would create, push the moratorium off until June 30, 2014, is what it
I
would
see
do
that
for the
here, yeah.
existing.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
now,
Let's just-
my understanding is that in, the Attorney General's office is only willing to allow moratoriums for so long, and I think that, a line in the sand has been in, somewhere in the 2015 range has been put out there by the AG, so, this will really be the last moratorium before. Originally, they did plan to submit an actual bylaw, and I think they backed off that for whatever reason. They
It was,
weren't prepared fully to present something just yet, so.
More time.
so are we good with having, the town manager reach out to the planning board and ask for a representative to come and talk to us about this?
Sure.
That's for Article 10. You wouldn't mind doing that also?
Not at all, on my list, yeah.
Thank you.
Article 11 is seeking funds for grant consulting services for resubmission of the housing rehab grant, block grant that we have in conjunction with Whitman. This was that was funded, I think you may recall, 2 years ago. You're eligible for funding every 2 years, about $830,000, I think. So the goal is to reapply for that program. I do know, I can get you, or I'm sure we can get you a really good update from, in terms of the benefits of that and how much funds have come into Abington versus Whitman, et cetera. But I do know for certain that, if you don't have one of a really short list of qualified consultants to put together these grant program submissions, you don't have a chance in heck of getting funded. So, that being the case, and this is the basic number that I've seen and expended in the past for similar services, so. So the question really, I think, ultimately becomes whether or not you want to pursue the program again. My opinion, it's a great program. It brings a lot of money into the community. And it has, I know this is the second year. The first year, especially when it's a new program like it was here, there's a lot of startup. You've got to procure services of a grant manager. You have to procure services of inspectors, et cetera. So you really don't start spending the money for quite a bit of time from the original funding. But now the program is in full swing, and a number of projects are in the works. So, and that's probably why the state only has every 2 year funding cycle, because it does take time to spend these funds. So I don't know how much of an update you feel you need before you make a recommendation for town meeting, or if that's another night just for informational purposes. Let me know what you prefer, and we'll try to get you what we can.
I would just, the funding source for this?
This would be free cash. And if
Okay.
you look at, again, the special town meeting,
12.5?
the 12.5 is basically the Griffin's dairy mowing and this. This is the 12.5 that is deducted from available free cash.
And it is basically a one-time thing, which would be consistent with use of free cash.
Can I
In
just
other words,
ask
it's
real
not a
quick?
sale.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Is that the program where they help people to stay in their homes, older people, is that the?
They, I don't know if you say help them stay in their homes per se, but it does.
Accept things in
Exactly.
their
It
homes
does-
that they may not be able to
Exactly.
keep up with or repair themselves?
Primarily, it's for, for income eligible and seniors. And I think for people over a certain age, there's a presumption of need, whether or not there's an income. So if you've got a huge public pension and you're retired, you still might qualify. Look, anyway.
What are you looking at me for?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the program. It is an excellent program. It's primarily, it deals with, heating, structural issues.
Updating things.
Updating, it's, you know, and it does, it has an impact also on property values, particularly if you're in a neighborhood with a home that needs some significant updating. So it's a good program. It's a good program.
Excuse me. Yes. In your past history, when somebody, if they tend to apply for this every 2 years, do you usually see them get it every 2 years? And I think my second question to this is, where this is a department that has other gift accounts for certain things, do they happen to have a gift account that maybe some of that could come out? I don't know what their gift accounts are. I know that there's several, and I don't know how they're spent, but I'm wondering if there's free cash for this, would they be able to put in some, maybe we could take some of that free cash and put it to the veterans so that we're not discriminating one group against another group, or, you know, just
You know what?
thinking off the top of my head.
I think two questions there. One of them is, you know, I have seen them funded. It's not easy to get them funded, but it really is a needs-based program. It's not like it's your turn and now it's someone else's turn. It is really, it's scored based upon needs and a number of factors. So it is very possible to get funded again. The second question is something we can research and see if there are some other funds available that may be used to help with the fund the consulting services. We can look at that, because if we can reduce the need for free cash for that item, yeah, we might be able to use it somewhere else, so we can look at that. But that was, I hit all your questions, with the two of them, okay. I'm good at forgetting the second half of questions, so sometimes conveniently.
Yeah, I'd say the
Three-pronged questions.
the three-pronged questions will be asked by Cindy this evening.
I can't even ask a three-pronged question, 'cause I forget by the time I get to the second one. Okay. Article 12 is perhaps pipe dreaming, that we would actually have collective bargaining agreements signed and sealed by November 4th, but in fairness to all involved, at least having the ability to fund them should those things come to pass. I will tell you that the biggest concern that I have, obviously, with that, and we've expressed that to our groups, is that where does the money come from for these? And, you know, when we use over $500,000 to balance the budget to maintain positions, it's hard to find funds. And my own discomfort right now, before having gone through a budget process myself here, in terms of feeling comfortable with where all the money is and where all the resources are. But in fairness, these people have been, all these groups have been out for some time without collective bargaining agreements up to date, and I am sympathetic to that, but I just don't believe that it's really possible to complete these in a timely manner for town meeting. And if we need an appropriation, where we would get that from the existing line items in the town, because obviously you're not using stabilization or free cash to fund these. That's a challenge that I don't think we'll be able to meet by November 4th.
Typically, you would tend to do salary type stuff anyways, and the annual.
Right, and I would
That's something that,
I would
so I'm saying,
agree with that.
Is that?
It might, yeah. On the other hand, I think when you get to a point where you have agreements that are literally 3 or 4 years out, convention kind of goes out the window, but that doesn't change the practical reality here for November.
Of the time constraint.
Yeah.
Yeah, what generally, what I have seen, and, you know, would probably happen would be the kind, it would come through, we'd have to find money for retro, for prior, you know, prior years or whatever, and then hopefully it would be as a go forward or something like that, sorry about that. But what you're saying right now is you don't expect that we'll have to fund this on November 4th. It's just that it's one of those things that's outstanding and eventually it's going to come.
Right, nor do I know how we would fund it, so.
Or what the collective bargaining number would end up being.
And that's the problem. I mean, as you know,
Yeah.
you know, 1% or 2% on a library contract is not the issue. It's 1-2% steps across the board.
Everybody,
when you apply them to everybody, you know, that becomes the issue, obviously, not any one individual group here.
And I guess in reading this is basically asking that we take available funds and put them into fund the outstanding collective bargaining agreements.
To fund collective bargaining agreements, correct, but those bargaining agreements aren't going to exist.
Right, and I guess my concern with that would be if you're in negotiations for, the past 2 years for a collective bargaining agreement, and you go forward and you fund it,
Yeah, no, you
that
can't.
may
You can't-
literally.
You can't, in my opinion, you
undermine
can't
your
fund, you
negotiation.
can't fund an agreement until it's voted by the Board of
Right.
Selectmen and ratified by the union.
Yeah, so
Then
by
you
us
see-
funding it prior
We
to, we're
won't.
violating it on all
Article
ends.
12 will probably
No.
be passed
And that's
over.
why the timing issue is likely not, that's a challenge we're probably not gonna be able to meet.
Okay.
So I just,
All right, I just wanted to kind of
no,
clarify.
that's,
Yeah, we wouldn't, yeah. Chances are, based upon what you tell us, chances are we will probably,
no,
given the information,
right.
I'm not gonna suggest what we will or won't do, because we
No.
haven't discussed it yet, but without collective bargaining agreements in place, we wouldn't know how much, we wouldn't know where, so
Right,
we
right.
can't.
And of course, I have, like I said, I can't stress enough how I am sympathetic to these groups, that they have been out for quite some time. You know,
Have they all
but I
been out
don't feel there's any practical way to address, that we can get all this done in a timely manner. Because even if you were to get one done, that has an impact potentially on the others. And if you can, it's, and it's not anybody's fault at this point, it's just the way it is, so.
Yeah, and these are 5 different, at least, I'm thinking, 1, 2, 3, and who knows if they'd all go at the same time, like you said, and they generally would not, so, but you never know. But probably won't be by November,
Right.
so, okay.
So Article 13 is, the treasurer collector is asked to, as you can see,
Rescind
rescind
authorization of
You've
our-
probably seen these in the past. There's money that was not necessary to complete a project and
Yep.
get it off the books.
For the, basically, it was never, it was authorized, never expended.
Right.
It's not like 40,000's coming back in.
No.
It's just the authorization to borrow 40,000, we're gonna rescind that authorization because it's not needed.
Right, so
Not
it's a
40,000 coming
balance sheet issue purely,
Housekeeping.
right.
Yeah.
In Article 14 is a transfer, money that was encumbered from last year's budget. You may be aware that there was an agreement with the collective bargaining units over health insurance. And part of that agreement, there was a mitigation fund that would address some hardships based upon some, co-pay changes,
Yes.
et cetera.
Right.
And I'm not sure exactly what the initial balance was, but the treasurer collector has told me that those agreements where there was mitigation was available, that time period has expired, and the treasurer has told me there's about 109,000 and change that is available, and what his recommendation, which I agree with completely. I mean, you could certainly let that go into free cash, next year's free cash, but he has suggested that money be transferred to the OPEB trust fund. Again, I think it's a good idea. It does, in a sense, that would become part of next year's free cash and be available for appropriation next year. But my understanding also is that part of the goal here is to try and use free cash, for the purposes of funding OPEB also. So it kind of meets those goals without having an impact on and you can't use encumbered funds from FY13 to fund any FY14 budget items anyway. So it either becomes next year's free cash, or it gets put away for something that the town wants to put it away for. So.
I do recall there being discussion about eventually we're going to have to start putting money in
Right.
this post-employment employment benefit fund, so.
And I think part of the strategy that Leo has on his mind is that, we're probably looking within a few years, very possibly with the school project, one of the largest bonds it would be the largest bond the town's ever issued. and trying to do all the right things, according to Standard and Poor's, advice, helps what that interest rate will be. And actually, Leo has produced a good document, which I think, at the end of our finance group meeting last week, we asked him to do a little more homework, and he did some projections, which we can get to you, the impact of different interest rates on the average taxpayer. So, if the borrowing rate is 1/8 different, and it doesn't matter every whatever, 3 point whatever it is, but by 1/8 what the impact is dollar-wise annually on a taxpayer. So it's actually rather interesting to see what that impact is. I mean, it's not
Show how
massive,
important it is to have your
but
ducks in a row before you go out
right.
to.
Now, obviously, you don't not have your police able to show up and have kids not having books and computers in order to do that, but to the extent that you can make some progress, it's helpful to do that. So, but it's an interesting projection, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind if we share that with you.
Sure.
So,
You guys have any, that's the end of the warrant. Do you guys have any questions? Nope, that we haven't already addressed? Nope.
okay,
All right, thank you very much. That was really helpful.
no problem. And if anybody finds any value in me emailing you these spreadsheets, let me know. It's completely up to you. I'm sure you're all buried with enough work to do.
We have the warrant, I think. I think we have the most recent up-to-date version of the warrant. And, I mean, we have these now, so, and 2 weeks from now when we meet again, if we have the petitioners and the other people in, if there's any change to this, we could see that again.
And in the meantime, we will be getting the warrant to town council. It shouldn't take a whole lot of time, obviously, and have, to the extent that any potential motions need to be refined, we'll be doing that too, so.
Yep, they usually write those up, too. All right, well, looking at the agenda, I think what we just did was, it covers all, correct me if I'm wrong, all three of those things: reviewing the special town meeting warrant, funding sources, and update on stabilization. I think we've covered all that sufficiently and well, and thank you very much.
Can I go? Am I being
Yes,
dismissed?
yes, you can.
Excellent.
You are, thank you very much.
Any
Thanks for coming
questions?
in.
And if, I don't know Mr. Cook, but he's not an issue, but if Sean wishes to, if you talk to him, talk to me on any of this stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'll be happy to
We can
spend
fill
some
in.
time with him too, if he
All
wants.
right,
So,
great.
okay. Good night,
Thanks very
everybody.
much. Thank you,
Night.
Rick.
See you, Rick.
Thank you. All right, great. Well, there you go. That was nice. That was good stuff. Also on the agenda, I just wanted to bring up the special municipal employee status. I think I sent you guys all an email with regard to special municipal employee status. I just sent you an email, which was a copy of a letter that Selectman Burbine had put together, I think, a year ago, or it was in 2012 anyway. And it's a long email, and it further details special municipal employee status. But to make a long story short, you guys all got, I think, everybody who's on a board, elected, appointed, volunteer, et cetera, was offered the opportunity to go and support their position at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. The next Board of Selectmen meeting is on, I think, October 21st. We're meeting before then anyway, so, but, because every year, the Board of Selectmen will review those committees, not individual people, but those committees on which their members are considered special municipal employees. You can read all you want about it. My understanding as to what it comes down to is if you are granted special municipal employee status, then you can represent another board. You can be on another board if you're a volunteer and that type of thing. Whereas if you are not granted special municipal employee status, you can't represent yourself or someone else, I think, on another board or in front of another board type of thing. So anyway, I would advise you to look through that. If you have any questions, you can direct them either to probably the town moderator or to the Board of Selectmen, possibly even to Rick. But anyone who wants to speak on behalf of the Finance Committee and Special Municipal Employee Status, I would just advise you, they do want to hear from people. It doesn't have to be everybody, but they want to hear from people who are impacted by this at the Board of Selectmen meeting on October 21st. Cindy?
So, we read through this and think about it next meeting, maybe have one person go up and represent the whole board, if that's what we wanna do.
We could take a vote on that, if that's what you guys want to do. We could do that. Why don't we
They
plan?
were unclear that they wanted everybody to come up, and I'm like, you
Yeah.
can't have, 50 people all coming up saying, I want it one by
Yeah.
one, so maybe by book.
Yeah. I asked that question, and the first response that I got was, oh, it doesn't have to be everybody, because special municipal employee status is granted to a committee, not to individuals, and then the next response I got almost immediately after that was that one of the Board of Selectmen members did want to hear from everybody on a committee, and that's kind of ridiculous. You can't get everybody to attend. I mean,
Can't get everybody to our own meeting.
you can't get rid of everything. So I think, Cindy, if we all take a moment to read that upon our own, we can discuss it and to see if we want to have one or two people attend that meeting in an official capacity, if you will, to speak on behalf of the whole group. Anyone can attend that wants to anyway. So should we take that up next meeting? I'm good with that.
That's a good idea.
All right, okay, great, thank you. I just wanted to bring it up because I got that email and knew that it was coming up on the Board of Selectmen meeting on October 21st. Review of minutes. Deb was kind enough to put the minutes together. Let me grab a copy here. Thank you. All right, based upon this, it looks like everybody who is here was here. And in this minutes, thank you, Deb, for putting together the liaison report in here too. Thank you. Anyone want a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? I'm good. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any liaison report updates? Cindy, you've already given us some, but.
Well, I knew there'd be questions for those two. And I guess Board of Health, do we want to move first, or should I just move into first and appoint a new second?
Oh, because
on
Tom's, yeah. What would you like to do?
I don't mind doing it.
Okay, so, does anyone else want to challenge Cindy for it? Nope, okay, you're it.
All right.
Because what we're doing is Cindy will become the lead liaison for Board of Health. Does anyone want to opt themselves up for the second liaison, or Board of Health?
Well,
Yeah, okay, great. Stephanie will take that.
Take what, I'm sorry.
The second liaison for Board of Health. Cindy's moving into first, and then Stephanie will take the second. I don't think we put Tom on any other thing that we have to. Yeah? Nope, that's it. Okay, good, thank you for bringing that up. Any other liaison reports?
I went and saw the Veterans Agent today, and he explained to me what Rick went over tonight, that he's gonna be short of money. And he plans on putting in for what Joe Colantoni was getting in the past, as far as that, the veterans benefits part of it.
So, going forward in future budgets?
Right, he wants to go back up to what Joe had, because they cut him last year, and he feels he needs some money, which is what Rick brought up tonight, so.
Got it.
which is also one of the recommendations that kind of we discussed as well.
Yeah, and
so.
he said he needs a secretary because he's sitting in the office now doing forms, when if he just had the secretary like Joe did for 6 hours a week, he could use that, so.
And now that's different than veterans benefits, that's the salary line
That's the
item.
salary line, I'm right.
Is he going to put in for that, for an addition to his budget in the current budget?
In
Or
this next coming
Oh,
budget.
in the next cut,
Right.
okay.
Not in this budget, but the next one.
Got it. Yeah, remember, that was something that John,
Yeah, John
had-
took
had
it away,
done,
not,
and I mean, I know that we approved it, but the process that John had given us was thinking that whoever they hired into that position,
Right.
wouldn't need it the way Joe did.
Because, yeah, his explanation at the time was that, because Joe wasn't as savvy with the computer.
Right.
That he just
Right, but
needed
he
somebody that,
But like he
but that
said,
they'd be hiring somebody that was savvy with the computer, and so they wouldn't, that was his reason
That was the
for-
theory behind
Right, that's
that,
what,
so.
that his
maybe not
argument
so
was that
much.
it keeps him in the office too much of the time when he could be out visiting clients and going to make sure that they need what they need and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I told him, just put it and present it to the committee and see
Yeah.
what they say.
Definitely, because I mean, unfortunately, we were going off of, we didn't.
John's, right.
Yeah, the veterans agent himself wasn't there, so it was kind of like a theory about, well, this is the way it's gonna work in the future.
Right.
And if, whether that reality is or isn't the case, so. Well, so, and thank you for that. Anything else?
Did speak with the building inspector.
You did, okay.
He expressed concern that he needs additional staff. I thought we would see something in the warrant for some help with that. I haven't touched base with him since we first talked a few weeks ago. But he explained they're up 14% to date over last year's permits. So he is looking for additional staff.
Do you know if he's brought that up to the town manager yet?
He said he was working with Dory on the wording for whatever he wanted in the warrant.
Oh, but there's nothing in there.
There's nothing in there, so I'm gonna follow up with him
Oh,
tomorrow.
I don't think there is.
There isn't.
And he may have just done the, you know, this is mostly capital, so doing that in the
Yeah.
spring, but
Yeah. Yeah, sounds
a
good.
little bit of time
Okay. Just looking around, okay. And so more to come on that, I would
More to
imagine.
come.
More to come on that. We did have a fire, who's the fire department liaison?
I think it's Sean.
Maybe Sean, I think it's Sean's
Yep.
probably not here. But, you guys got, and Deb got a copy of that, where he talks about, you know, the status of, all the projects that are going in. He did throw it out, he'd be more than happy to have a tour of the, fire department facilities, which I think would be really good. So I know the last time I was in there, they were just about to open Station 2. And now he said if we were to come, and I think we really, and I'll talk to Sean about setting something up, if we were to come and visit those facilities, he said, I think we'd be very much impressed with some of the changes, and I think we should do that. So I would actually throw out to you guys as liaisons, if you want to, you know, we're gonna be going through the November, town meeting. But then we kind of have a little bit of a break through the holidays, and then come January, we're back, end of January, we're back in the budget. So it might be a good time to set up some tours. Library, police, fire, schools, which is always challenging because there's so many facilities, but I think this year would be particularly interesting, so. So I would just throw it out to you guys if you want to reach out to your contacts there and try to set up some tours that we can attend. All right, I think that might be everything. Anybody have any other liaison reports? Yes, no, yes? Okay. We've covered our budget. You guys okay with coming in 2 weeks from tonight, October 16th? I think we can cover everything in that, and then that night we'll also have to come out with recommendations. So it would really be focused on the warrant and the articles.
so we're gonna be able to get all the petitioners, everybody in here by then?
Well, we'll see. Rick will point, if they can't, then we may have to have another meeting, but I would like us to have our recommendations no later than then. So why don't we just, we'll plan on the 16th. Should we try another night that week as well, in case not, chances are if everybody can't show up on that one night? Is anybody available on the 15th, that Tuesday? That Tuesday night, the 15th? Just to throw it out in case we need.
Tuesday's
Yeah,
fine.
Tuesday's all right with me.
Tuesday, okay, so why don't I plan on that? Why don't we, I'll send Rick a note and you guys saying that we're going to and get a room and stuff for Tuesday, October 15th, just to give some options for those that we're gonna try to bring in here. Because after the 16th, we would really want our recommendations by the 16th, so I can write them up and get them to Dory by the 18th, so that they get posted by the 21st. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, I'll send you guys out a reminder that that's what we're doing. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? From a mail perspective, we have a couple of the beacons, if anybody's interested. And I didn't open this up yet, but I imagine it might be, here we go. This is just $236, which is our Association of Town Finance Committee, our dues, our annual dues. Deb, can I give that to you? There are no funds in the selectmen's budget. Oh, because it doesn't go in the selectmen's budget, I think it's our budget, so, I was just reading that. Hold on, I'll figure that out. I don't know what that's all, Nancy wrote a note on that, I'll look into that in a second.
Well, I believe there was one year that John had decided that all these dues were going to come out of the 2020 budget, so they did put it in there.
Yeah, I thought so
Or
too.
built it.
Oh, that's easy. I'll look into that. I always thought it came, in the past, doesn't it always come out of our own budget?
It did, except for one time when it for some reason,
Yeah.
the board of selectmen.
Yeah, I'll look into that. And then this other thing, is, the Association of Town Finance Committee, the annual meeting. Has everyone gone to that? Anyone gone to that? Have you gone yet? He hasn't gone yet, he's just, surprisingly, have you guys have all gone or not? And I won't poll the group or whatever, but anyway, there is an annual meeting, it's held on a Saturday, it's an all-day kind of thing. It's 9 to 3 this year, on Saturday, October 19th. It's held at the Regional Vocational Technical School in Franklin. If anybody is interested, I can scan these and send them around, and you guys can let me know. It's October 19th.
What are the highlights, Maureen?
Let me tell you what the highlights are. Okay, what usually happens is they have like a welcome, and let's see. Finance Committee member, Joan Martin from Andover will open it up. And then there is your town's credit and bond rating. That's the first session. Town administrator from Dedham will be speaking. Managing director of Standard & Poor's Finance Committee member in Boxford will be speaking. And First Southwest Company and Finance Committee member from Swampscott. So they will be talking about your town's credit and bond rating, as Rick had just mentioned, how important that is, especially if you're coming up to a big expenditure potentially like the schools. Then later in the morning they break out into workshops. New to Finance Committee, Budgeting 101. That's one of the options. Municipal benchmarking is another. Then the true cost of new development. This workshop will highlight how Finance Committee and the Planning Board can work collaboratively to assist the real costs of new residential developments. This session will focus on how Finance Committee can use town expenses to determine the impact on the school system and other services if you expand your residential footprint, if you will. And then the fourth one is other post-employment benefits, the OPEB, which we just spoke of too. That's another session. So kind of very good. Then at the lunchtime speaker is Dan Morgado, Shrewsbury Town Manager and MMA representative to the Special Commission to investigate and study retiree health care and other non-pension benefits. And then in the afternoon, there's other workshops, capital budgeting, buying the big stuff, Proposition 2.5, the ins and outs of an override, and the third, which is an option, examining your audited financial statements. So those are the highlights of the annual Association of Town Finance Committee's annual meeting. So if anybody's interested, let me know. Otherwise, Deb, between you and I, one of us can figure out how to scan this and get it to everyone to look. I would be happy to do that. All right, guys, so that's the mail, and then the Massachusetts Municipal Directory, probably. So if anyone's interested, telephone numbers for all the cities and towns in the state, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, contact information, etc., is here too. So that's about it. I think that is it. All right, any other things to bring up? Nope. All right, I will entertain a
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. 8:33. Give me 1 second. Thank you.
Go there, Phil?
I don't think I can on the 19th.
It's a good take.
I would like to go.